Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Me? Well, the countdown has started. There are just 4 more of these shows after this one before myself and the construction equipment world turn our collective attention to Las Vegas and the latest outing of the ConExpo show. As ever, there is still plenty to do before I board the plane. I'm scheduled to be on a Zoom call at noon today when someone is going to explain exactly what the construction industry is doing wrong in its fight against mental health. And on Wednesday, just in time for the bad weather to arrive, I'll be on site in London getting up close with a new Cat 340 demolition excavator, which is dead exciting. I'm hoping to bring you some footage of that before I jet off. Just so you know, my latest weekly column this week pays tribute to the soon-to-be outgoing NFDC CEO Howard Button, after we revealed exclusively last week that the Federation has started its search for his successor. You can read that tribute on demolitionnews.com, where it's currently the lead story. Alternatively, once I've hit the intro, I'll press a button. You'll see it in the chat. Go and have a look if you have the time and the inclination. Incidentally, just before we get things underway, you might recall that we recently had Andy Stevens here on the show as a guest to talk about all things mental health related. Well, apparently, Andy is currently in hospital with suspected meningitis, which is no laughing matter whatsoever. So even though it's highly unlikely that he'll be listening to this, get well soon, Andy. We need you back on the mental health front line just as soon as you're recovered. Now, without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I'm your host, Mark Anthony. It is Monday, the 6th of March. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. In today's show, John Deere shows off its battery technology ahead of its ConExpo launch. Avant attachments will make other compact wheel loaders and owners green with envy. You get the idea. And Case updates its grader controls. Plus, we're going to go back in time with a JCB blast from the past. And we're going to get to all of that in just a second. But first, let's see who among the rich and the shameless will be celebrating a birthday on this day of days. Happy birthday! Excuse me 1 second. Buttons to press. Good morning, Mick Norton, who's just turned up, and I didn't press the button in quite in time. It is many happy returns today to renowned ceiling decorator Michelangelo, and to the plump half of comedy duo Abbott and Costello, that is Mr. Lou Costello. Happy birthday also to old school comedian Frankie Howard, to the first woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova, to Mary Wilson from the Supremes, Pink Floyd guitarist Dave Gilmour, and to singer Kiki D, to movie director Rob Reiner, director of my favourite movie, one of my favourite movies, Stand By Me, comedian Alan Davis, basketball giant Shaquille O'Neal, and to elbow singer Guy Garvey, who should be welcome at Glastonbury every single year. Many happy returns to them, one and all. Now, before we get started, here is a very quick reminder of our question of the day. Yes, this was prompted by a discussion in our WhatsApp group over the weekend. Tracks or wheels, which do you prefer? Which is best suited to your application? Which is most comfortable to drive? Which is the most easy to maintain? Let us have your thoughts. Wheels or tracks is the question of the day. We'll get to your answers right at the end of the show. Where are we? Sorry, somebody just sent me a text message. But do people not know that I'm going live at the moment? We've reported previously that those fine folks at John Deere are planning to unveil their electrification ambitions at ConExpo next week. Well, ahead of that big reveal, the company has offered a sneak peek behind the scenes to preview the incoming battery technology that will power its new electric machines. And this is what it looks like. And we have the usual question that always comes in. Libby over on YouTube, how are we going to generate enough electricity for all these batteries? It's a good question to which I don't actually have a sensible answer. But it is a constant question. If anybody has any sensible solutions on that, I'd love to hear from you. I just want to very quickly mention we are going to hopefully see John Deere. They're not among the companies that we're going to be working with, but I obviously want to swing by their stand and the stand of Case, who will come up later in the show. So watch this space. Hope to bring you more on that post ConExpo. And from John Deere to another US manufacturer that is currently putting the finishing touches to its ConExpo display, and that is Case. The company has still found time, however, to drop a new film to show off the electro-hydraulic controls, should I say, that are now available on its latest range of motor graders. And this is what they can do. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see exactly what Case has up its sleeve for ConExpo. You might recall last time around, they actually unveiled an all-electric backhoe loader that nobody saw coming. So who knows what they've got up their sleeve this time around. Looking forward to seeing what they're up to. I'm just going to throw over to the chat very quickly. Al Grierson nodding out all the way from Luxembourg. Still intending to get some footage of a brand new Case grader here in Luxembourg. Weather just keeps saying no. On Wednesday this week, when the long-awaited beast from the east is about to deposit a blanket of snow over south of England and London, I will be on site on a roof with a camera in my hand. I'm going to freeze. Now, speaking of snow and snowy type places, you travel to places like Finland and Sweden, you'll know that Avant compact wheel loaders are all the rage. They're used for construction, landscaping, lawn care, road maintenance, snow removal, and a whole lot more besides. They are available with a huge range of specialist attachments, so they are really incredibly versatile, and they're perfectly capable of tackling digging duties if and when the need arises. always thought this about Bobcat as well. I wonder how many attachments Avant actually offers. And I wonder if there's actually a customer in the world that has all of them. Avant, Bobcat, if you're watching, please let us know. I'd be fascinated to hear if somebody has got all of your attachments.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
We started today's show with a look towards the future. So for a bit of balance, we're going old school. We're going proper old school. JCB has released a film of its 1750 wheel loader that was launched way back in the early 1970s. Let's just say JCB wheel loaders have come quite a way since then. Wow. As Ken Hatcher says, before my time, I was actually at primary school when that thing was launched, which is about 1,000 years ago, way before my time too, says Rob Thompson. Morning, Rob. Thank you very much indeed for being here. That JCB video was in the days when the product was 100% British manufactured. Now it's less than 30%. Is that true? Is that right? Can that be right? I don't know the answer to that, but that is a staggering statistic if that's the case. But as Jim Turner says, great bit of footage, particularly like the soundtrack. Sounded like something they'd stolen from an old Carry On movie. So yes, I'm going to do this in a second when I can find it. I want to do this.
Sorry to interrupt the guy with the funny glasses, but if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button as it helps our channel. Or better still, share this video with a friend or a colleague. Thank you. Right, back to Beardy.
Right, that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into the chat to see what you're all saying today, to try and find out whether we've got a vote in favour of tracks or a vote in favour of wheels, or somewhere between the two. If you can't stick around for that, then please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll see you after this for the Craic. Good morning, gang. How are we all doing this fine day? It's nearly time. It's nearly time for me to, I was going to say get a break, but it means I've got to traipse around the long and the short of all things Las Vegas. Let's have a look. I tell you what, let me go back to the beginning of the chat because that's where we belong. First off the mark, as he so often was Ken Hatcher. Morning, Ken. Thank you very much indeed for being here. I think Ken's got a couple of bits to say later on. Steve Williamson is here as well. Oh, do excuse me. There you are. There's the proof. Steve Williamson has the cold up in Bonnie, Scotland. Don't worry, Steve. It'll all be over soon. You'll be heading down south before heading off to All Points, Las Vegas. McCarran International Airport, here we come. Peter McKenna's in the house as well. Morning, Peter. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Who else do we have here? Tristan Mays, there we are. Tristan Mays says, first to comment. You may have been the first on LinkedIn, but you were not the first by a long shot. But thank you very much indeed for being here. For those of you that don't know, Tristan Mays is Mr. Crane, Mr. Crane World. CraneHub.net for everything crane related and a whole lot more besides. Gary Muirhead's here as well. Morning, Mark, and morning, guys, and morning to you, Gary. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Al Grisson, we've mentioned Al, but he's all the way over in Luxembourg. Thank you very much indeed for being here, Al. And there's Tristan saying good morning. Let's have a look. Yes, if you would like to read my tribute to Howard Button, who is soon to be succeeded as the president of the National Federation of Demolition Contractors, that's where to find it. Easiest just to go to demolitionnews.com. It's the lead story as we speak. There was my question of the day. Wheels or tracks, and I think somebody has actually said that it is a horses for courses, fully aware of that, but given the choice, which would you choose? Which would you prefer? There's Mick Norton saying good morning. Peter McKenna says tracks, get over more terrain with them. Yep, true enough. There's Jim Turner. Morning, Jim. Steve Williamson says, question of the day, tracks, I prefer the jobs you get to do with a track machine. Spent 5 years on a duck, but prefer the jobs you get with tracks. I actually mentioned this. I mentioned this in the WhatsApp group. There was lots of talk about getting duck tickets and being able to drive a duck. And it just occurred to me, if somebody from outside the industry is watching this, prefer the jobs that you get with a duck. They'd think we'd all gone bloody mad, which frankly is the case, I think. Jim Turner says, question of the day, tracks. There seems to be a leaning towards tracks. Mick Saunders is here. Morning, Mick. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And Tim Goston's here as well. Morning, Tim. Nice packed house this morning. It's still a fine question from Libby over on YouTube. How are we going to generate enough electricity for all these batteries? It is a good question. It is a very good question, and I don't actually think we have a sensible answer to it as yet, particularly given the UK government's slow decision on moving to nuclear power, which means that I'm fairly sure a friend of mine actually tweeted that he'd been given a potential power cut warning over in the Croydon area over this past weekend. So, yeah, we are right at capacity, and yes, we are still pursuing electric machines. Could all end in tears, I believe. Rob Thompson makes a good point. Morning, all. Long time no see. Yep, absolutely, Rob, but welcome back. You're always welcome here. The door is always open. Definitely wheels for me. Wouldn't want to track a 360 all the way to London. 180 wheeled all the way. More variety of work. Good point. Yeah, certainly over distance. I'm going with wheels. Question of the day. Mick Norton says, tracks. D8H towing a 12-yard box. He's been very specific about his use of tracks, although obviously 12-yard box. Wheels on that, and as the song goes, they do go round and round. Question of the day. Depends on the terrain. Horses for courses, as they say. Yeah, quite right, Mick. There's Al Grisson again. I did mention this earlier. Still planning to get some footage of a brand new case grader here in Luxembourg, where they just keep saying no. Yeah, it is so difficult. And again, I mean, I've been waiting to see this Cat demolition excavator for about a month now. And in the end, we finally just said, look, before I go off to ConExpo, let's just put a date in the diary, let's go do it. At which point I looked at the weather forecast and it said, snow. Just the sort of thing that you want to be happening while you're filming upwards at a high ridge excavator. Awesome. I mentioned the Avant machine, and Nick Drew certainly does like his Avant machines. And as Al Grierson says, that's a cursed looking machine. I don't think I've ever described a machine as cursed looking. I think I need to do it more often, but thank you for that, Al. Cat 836C grader looks neat, but I wouldn't like the direct mounted hydraulic controls, much preferring the old range of levers common to the unique Cat 14G range. Not a single UK dealership in the UK selling case 836C. Is that right? Have we just given up the ghost on case graders, or is it that specific model? I'd like to know more. Please, if anyone's got any points on that, I'd love to hear about it. Now, as is so often the case, I just sneak under the lid of the box marked can of worms don't open, and it usually relates to electric machines, and now all of a sudden there are worms everywhere. As Mick Sumner says, just a pointer about e-power. I have a little fold-up e-bike. The battery's gone, so I went to the shop to get a new one. 275 of your finest English pounds. Won't say what I said, but saw a brand new e-bike for £475. Got a feeling we may be taking for a ride. God knows what they are for cars. That's ludicrous. If it's actually as cost-effective to buy a new bike as it is to buy a new battery, they've got their maths wrong somewhere along the line. We got onto the JCB 1750 wheel loader before my time. Yeah, before mine as well, kid. Don't get carried away. You're not the youngest here. You're probably not the oldest, but you're not the youngest. But yeah, I was at primary school when that came out. I'm fairly sure that came out just before the Silver Jubilee, so 1977. So I think that would have been about 74, 75, something like that. Rob Thompson says, way before my time too. The JCB video was in the days when the product was 100% British manufactured. I wonder how that actually breaks down, because obviously a lot of electronics are coming from the Far East. I guess some of the steel is coming from further afield these days. But I wonder if that's actually true. 30%? Is that really the case? Great bit of footage though. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, JCB, for their 75th anniversary, which I think was about 18 months ago now, they actually gave my son Fred access to their archives. And we put together a film which you can still find over on Diggers and Dozers. It's proved incredibly popular. But going back through some of that footage, obviously we had hours and we turned that into about 15-20 minutes, I think. So there's a huge array of old footage kicking around in the JCB archives. Maybe we should be airing a bit more of that too. That brought back memories. I bet it did. Dan Cullen's late arrival, but he's here nonetheless. That's all that counts. As he says, I think he's starting to sound like me. How the devil are you? Yeah, how the devil are you? Ken Hatcher says, I like tyres on road and tracks in mud. Makes perfect sense. Now, just saw this. Question of the day, tracks. At least I can follow those machines around on site. What about, has anybody had any dealings with like quad tracks? I know there's been a few machines out there, excavators and the like that have, and wheel loaders that have gone over to like a quad track, like the high drive elevated sprocket design, but with one at each corner. Has anybody had any experience with that? Is that the same as tracks? Is it the same as wheels? Is it a bastard combination of the two? I'd love to know. Dan Cullen, the question of the day was wheels or tracks? What do you prefer, wheels or tracks? There we are. Along the lines of the question of the day, I'm still hoping JCB brings out a 3CX on tracks. Either something like their 1CX track machine or a 3CX on quad tracks. Quad tracks, there you are. Quad tracks are suddenly the topic of conversation. I've never driven one. Seen a few, never driven one. I'd love to give one of those a go. And do quad tracks have any form of suspension? I don't know the answer. I'm guessing they probably don't. I don't know. Would they be a more comfy ride over rough terrain? I honestly don't know the answer there. Dan Cullen says, top of the morning, Tristan. Yeah, absolutely right. Ken Hatcher, Las Vegas airport has changed its name apparently. Is that right? It's not McCarran anymore? Can that be right? I didn't notice when I booked it. I hope I'm flying to the right bloody place. Question of the day, wheels or track? Not really bothered. Love operating both of them, says Gary Muirhead. Quite right too. Harry Reid now. Is it? It's called Harry Reid? Who the hell is Harry Reid? Who the hell was McCarran? I honestly don't know the answer to any of these questions. Track says you have no puncture or wobbles. All the wobbles. Question of the day, tracks as well. Not as high a climb to cab on smaller machines. Yeah, safeguarding the knees. We'll see solar panels on machines soon. I've heard dafter ideas. I've heard many dafter ideas than that. Hamza, Quamrush. Hi everyone. I'm gonna call you Hamza because I'm not entirely sure I'm pronouncing your second name correctly. But good morning, Hamza. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. You will be unaware of this, but those that join us for the first time get the welcome confetti. You are very welcome here, sir. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Love to know where you're watching from. Back to the comments. Now, where were we? There we are. Kerry Jones. Morning, Kerry. I didn't see you arrive. Tyres for me, says Kerry. Mick Norton says, I noticed from the spec of the Case 836C grader only offers a 10-foot moldboard, so it's a no. However, float control is a nice option. Yeah, I must admit, graders kind of live over there as far as I'm concerned. I don't get to see them anywhere near often enough. But bearing in mind I am in Las Vegas in a few days' time, I'm sure Cat will have graders on show. I'm pretty sure Case will have graders on show as well. And I would imagine that John Deere will have graders on show as well. So I may go and spend a bit of time gradering. Kerry Jones. Remember, coal yard top of my old street used to have a JCB loader. Passed it many times as a kid. Was that the inspiration, Kerry? Sometimes that's all it takes. Actually encountering the thing firsthand when you're a kid. It certainly explains the reason my first car was a Volkswagen Beetle, which I paid way over the odds for, which was a noisy, smelly, hot, uncomfortable car. But my dad had one when I was a kid, and that was plenty good enough. Used quad tracks. Quad tracks have suspension. Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. Say it used to put solar panels on the sunroof of their cars, at least on their Audi A4 variant. Don't know if it was just a gimmick. Yeah, I do wonder about that. I've had a Say it in the past, not with solar panels. I'm not entirely sure how much you're actually drawing from that, but it does make me wonder. Really, if bearing in mind where Croydon is, I mentioned the fact that Croydon was threatened with power cuts this weekend. It's on the outskirts of London in very wealthy and leafy Surrey, and all of a sudden they may have been without power. I don't think it came to be, but there were warnings going out. So if we suddenly have fleets of electric machines coming on board, what will be the deal with that? I've mentioned this before. I would like to think that if any major plant hirer decides to go all in on the electric machines, they will follow the lead of eVision, the Tesla hire company down in Kent, run by Hugh Edliano of HE Services. They've got a huge warehouse building, and the whole thing is made of solar panels. So the entire time those cars are back in their premises, they are being charged. They're being charged free of charge. Mother Nature is taking care of the bill, which is a fantastic step forward. However, it doesn't address the point that Mick made earlier. What is the life expectancy of a battery in an electric machine? What happens with that battery afterwards? How much is a replacement, and so on down the line? I can't remember who we were talking about. We were talking about a manufacturer who reckoned that their batteries would last for as long as the machine would last. Lasting is one thing, not deteriorating is another. I've got one of these. The battery life on this is very good, but I am only about a year into owning that. By the time my contract is up in about a year's time, I will see a noticeable decline in the ability of that battery to take a charge and hold a charge. I'm sure in construction equipment, bearing in mind there are a lot of them are based on the same lithium-ion technology, I'm sure we will have exactly the same challenges. Was that JCB at the end of the road an inspiration for your career choice, Kerry Jones? He says maybe. Yeah, you never know. You never know. I wish I could remember who it was. I did interview somebody who said they grew up overlooking, I think it was the construction of the M40, possibly. I just saw, machines going past and everything else. That grabbed their attention, and sure enough, when their choice came to make, when their time came to make a choice of career, they harked back to that and decided, yep, that's a career path for me. Al Griston says, according to a manufacturer, the battery should last as long as the frame of the machine before the fade makes the machine unusable. Yeah, but I do wonder about that. And with this, bearing in mind, I take a charger with me. I've got a power pack, particularly for things like ConExpo where I'm filming all day. So I take a power pack for that. You don't have that luxury on a construction machine. At some point during the day, particularly if your machine has started, or the battery has started to deteriorate, you've got to get it back to a charging station before the whole thing conks out. And I do wonder about that. I know we've touched on this before about the reasoning behind the halting of the UK's smart motorway construction program. And one of the key reasons behind that halting of the smart motorway construction was the fact that there was a concern. Just so you know, smart motorways do not have a hard shoulder. They are 3, 4, 5 lanes, no hard shoulder. But the concern is that when an electric car dies, it doesn't have the ability to sort of drift off onto a hard shoulder, and it stops. It just grinds to a halt precisely where it is. You lose all power, you lose steering, you lose braking, you lose everything. The whole thing will just stop. If that is the case with construction machines, which I'm pretty sure it is likely to be, are we going to have sites around the country dotted with machines that have just run out of juice, and we now need to get some sort of portable solution to get the juice to them? All of which takes me back to when we were talking to Tim Burnhope up at JCB about the hydrogen revolution that's taking place up at JCB. And one of the points that he made was that the construction always takes fuel to the machine. The machine doesn't travel to the fuel, whereas with electricity, that seems to be the option that we're headed towards, which is a complete change of mindset. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that name, but hello, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, what is that language? Is that Russian, Ukrainian? Is that Polish? I don't know, but wherever you're watching from, thank you very much indeed for being here. Please let us know where you're watching from. And as you're here, as I've already said once this morning, when you join for the first time, you get some welcome confetti just to make you feel warm and fuzzy and welcome to the show. So thank you very much indeed for being here. Let's have a look. Mick Norton says, manufacturers are less than economical with the truth regarding the life of their machine batteries in all applications. Unfortunately, I think that is not a trait that is peculiar to batteries and battery life. I'm sure I've told this story before, but I will bore you with it one more time. I used to do the PR for Rama, and just on that subject, we are working with Rama at ConExpo, and I am as pleased as punch about that, because I've spent many a good hour with the fine folks at Rama. But yes, Rama and Craic as was, and I think the other one was possibly Montevere, possibly Indico, possibly both of those, had decided that they wanted to standardise the way in which blow energy of hydraulic breakers was measured. So all of the Europeans signed up to be standardised, so that you could literally, as a customer, you could compare Craic, which is obviously now Epiroc, with a Montevere, with an Indico, with a Rama, and so on down the line. And they invited all of the Japanese and the Korean manufacturers, of which there are many, and they all just went, nah, no, we'll pass, thanks. We'll just keep claiming numbers without actually proving them. At which point the whole thing fell apart. So it does make me wonder just how accurate some of these figures are. And even fuel consumption, when you look at a spec sheet, I still occasionally look at spec sheets. When you look at a spec sheet on a machine, the number of times you see fuel consumption asterisk or 2 asterisks or 3, and you go right the way down, based on perfectly flat ground, brand spanking new machine, not carrying a load, not going uphill, not going down. There's a lot of variables in there. Let's have a look. Just read up on the manufacturer's book for my bike. They admit to 200 charges and the battery is kaput. 200 charges. You're using that. I'm not suggesting that you're doing this all the time, Mick, but I would imagine, you know, somebody that's using a bike of that type as a commuter type thing, that's less than a year. What is the average working year for most people? About 220 days. If that is the case, 200 charges. So a couple of weeks before you're due to see the year out, your working year out, you're going to have to go and buy yourself a new bike or a new battery. Yeah, something needs to give. I have to admit, I live, as the crow flies, I live about 15 miles from the centre of London. If I'm going into London, generally, I do take the train, because there's a train station at the end of my road. Although on Wednesday I'm driving in, partly because of where it is, but also because we've got a lot of gear to take with us. But I did very, very seriously consider getting myself an e-bike so that I could pop into London. Yes, it will be quite a hike, but 15 miles there, 15 miles back, well within the range of an e-bike that can do 50, 60, 70 miles on a single charge. Based on what I'm just reading there, I don't see the point. And obviously there are the safety concerns as well. 15 miles in either direction, amongst taxis and buses and lunatic drivers, it's kind of asking for trouble. So I should continue to take the train, I think, particularly given the fact that I would need to replace the damn bike every year or so. Right, people, I think that's going to do us for today. Plenty more to show you tomorrow, plenty more to show you Wednesday, Thursday, Friday as well. And then we're off, and there's a lot going on. I am desperately trying to get hold of somebody to do a podcast before I go. I've got a conversation this afternoon that may lead to another one as well. We are beavering away in the background on the new show that will start. I should have saved this for the end. Our friend is from Russia. Peace to the world. Yeah, absolutely peace to the world. And if it's coming from Russia, that means an awful lot. So thank you very much indeed for that message. Yes, we are still beavering away in the background. I'm going to come back to the comment I've just seen there. Yeah, we're beavering away in the background for our new show, Construction Equipment News, which is a couple of weeks away. Wanted to get ConExpo out of the way. And I have to say, ConExpo is both a highlight and a bit of an albatross around our neck at the moment, because everything at the moment is pointing towards ConExpo. But we're going to come back this time in 2 weeks. I'll be sat here having done ConExpo for another 3 years with basically an empty screen. In some ways, that's a bad thing, because it means that my part vacation, part business trip will be over and done with, but it also means that we can clear the decks and start getting on with some of the other bits and pieces we're planning. And one of those is our new Construction Equipment News show, which we will be bringing to you very, very soon. Nigel for a podcast. If you're talking about Nigel Williams, Dan, we've already done that. We did that a couple of years ago. If you go over to any good podcast platform, and some of the crappier ones as well, just search for Demolition News Radio, and I think we called the show The Thinking Man's Digger Driver. You can find that. Had a right old chat with Nigel about many of the things that he and I are still speaking about to this very day. So not a great deal has changed since we had that conversation. Do have a few more in mind, just as a very quick aside. One that I've got in mind is Steve Williamson, and I may even go the whole hog and do the whole of the dynamic. You want to do Ed Butler as well, but we do have this Construction Content Creators Club now that is beavering away in the background, and we had a couple of people on board with that. I've already featured Ben the operator, who was part of it. I've also featured Ollie Guns, who was part of it. I featured Katie Kelleher, who was part of it, but I haven't done Ed and I haven't done Steve. So at some point, possibly while we're in Las Vegas, we'll be doing that as well. So yes, lots and lots to come. And just as a final point before I head off, I've been accepted now for YouTube podcasts. Not that it's any great achievement. You don't have to do a great deal, but they just basically check your content and make sure that you're a legit person. And apparently they weren't paying attention because they've accepted me. And that means that we will be doing more in the way of podcasts over on YouTube. Not really going to change our format. All I would say is that the experts and the gurus at YouTube, and certainly at their podcast division, are recommending that we try to produce video and audio podcasts of an hour and a half or 2 hours in length. I normally try to keep them under an hour because I'm aware that people do have lives to lead rather than just listening to me and whoever I've selected as a guest at that given time. But if they're suggesting 2 hours, certainly some of the conversations. I mean, when I was with Ollie Guns, I think we actually recorded about an hour and a half, but I think we actually spoke for about 3 hours. If we'd just kept the camera and the microphone running, we would have had 3 hours there with no trouble at all. So I think that's going to be one of the plans going forward. So watch this space for that. All of that is for the future, but I'm going to be back here tomorrow, 10 a.m. as usual. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for being here. Thanks for all the feedback. I think it was largely unanimous. I think we all prefer tracks, depending on the terrain, but largely prefer tracks. I've now got to come up with a suitably sensible question of the day for tomorrow. If anybody's got any suggestions, I'd love to hear from you. Until then, everybody, please have a good day. Look after yourselves, as always. Until then, have a good one. All the best.